Okay, well, we're glad to be here for another BYU Family History Library Sunday afternoon class. And this week, we're going to be talking about another family search partner, some of those family search partner websites, a couple of them, Geneanet and Filae. And we will also be talking about French genealogical resources. So these are the topics for today. I'd like to mention before we get started that the BYU Family History Library records these classes and they are uploaded to our BYU Family History Library YouTube channel. So if you go to YouTube and look for BYU Family History Library, you will find us about 550 so videos. And number goes up by 3 or 4 a week. And we are also have in the library a virtual desk, which means if you go to the BYU Family History Library website and just type in BYU Family History Library in the Google and you'll find it. And there will be a link there to a virtual help desk. If you click on the virtual help desk, you will get another link that will take you directly to a computer that will be, there'll be someone there to help you during the hours which the library is open, and you'll see those hours right there on below the click before the link to the virtual desk. Or you can always ask the person there when you're open. But the advantage here is we have many of the missionaries who are experts in various fields, who are available online during the day, and are also in the library, and they can help. We can get online with you and have a session, and we are more than happy to talk to people and help them with their research. Okay, so now we're going to move forward. Both Filae and Geneanet are family search partner websites. And what that means is that they are affiliated with Family Search. And Family Search is a corporation headquartered in Salt Lake City, Utah, in the United States, and it's wholly owned by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Family Search is separate. It's an independent corporation, so it's not the church, and so basically it's the sponsor and the person and the entity that pays for all of this. The members actually pay for the operation of the church through their tithings, and so what happens is that as a result of this, the Family Search has entered into partnerships with other websites. The partnership is that Family Search supplies records and support and access to their program and to their website, and the other companies then have the benefit to the members of the church is that they get free access to certain programs. If you are not a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, these are both of the programs I'll talk about today have a free section, but also have a paid part. So it's very common that these kind of database programs will allow you to do some work on their website for free, but then we'll say, oh, well, if you want the like premium version, then you pay more, or you pay something. Both of these websites in the last few weeks actually have been purchased by, and I'll put both of them up here, have been purchased by MyHeritage and by Ancestry. So Filae.com is the company. It's a French company, and it's now owned by MyHeritage as of very recently. Geneanet, and shortly after MyHeritage announced their acquisition of Filae, Ancestry.com and announced their acquisition of Geneanet. And they're both the French companies. And it is the intention of both Ancestry and MyHeritage, at least initially, obviously, Things could change, but right now the two programs are still operating independently. But there were some definite benefits to MyHeritage. So this is just a kind of a link here. This is the link on the Family Search website that is available, where you can begin your process if you would like to have free access to the programs. You start that from the Family Search website. Okay, don't get these two websites confused. There are two separate websites, Filae and Geneanet. They're completely different. They're not associated anyway. And now that they're owned by MyHeritage and Ancestry, they're kind of in different genealogical camps, if you will, in the way they're owned. But if you have French ancestors, and we're talking French-speaking ancestors, then that would be in Quebec and other parts of the world where the French had influence and where they were maintaining the French Empire at one time. You should probably explore both of these websites. This is information that is valuable to anyone whose ancestors spoke French. And you do not have to know French to help to know to work with the websites, because both websites are in French and English. But then there's a problem, and that is all the records are in French. So when you get into the records, you will have to know some French to get into the records, or have someone help you with the records. Just a little background first, and I'll start with Geneanet. Geneanet was developed in 1996 by a genealogical community, and they have presently more than 4 million members, and they all share their genealogical information for free. They're on family trees, and that's entirely free. They also have more than 7 billion individuals in those family trees. They have some digitized archival records, some family pictures, some indexes. And it's all available with a powerful search engine, and they have a blog and a lot of other things that they have on their website that are helpful. It's a good place to get going and start. And you may very well find someone out there who is in France or in another part of Europe that has already found a significant portion of your French genealogical history. So it's always a good thing to explore at least your surnames in these various programs. So just a reminder, as I said a moment ago, there is a premium version with additional resources. So here's the kind of the important thing about the websites. They have an individual family tree. You can build a family tree on these websites, and then you can and then that will be shared, and you'll be able to have contact with people. People will be able to contact you, or you will be able to contact other family tree people, and learn about their family trees. Geneanet DNA matches over 1 million family trees. So there's about 1 million family trees on here. And you can imagine that these are more specifically in France and Europe. And so if you're not getting any DNA tests results, matching results off of other programs, you may want to either upload your DNA data to Geneanet or take a DNA test through Geneanet to get the process started, and then you can get into the matching out there of over 1 million people who have already done that. This is some of the ideas of what kinds of things are on the program. They have 3 billion indexed individuals. Those are the people that you can search for with last name and keywords and get more search criteria. So it's a very good place to go. And they also have what's called the genealogy library. And the genealogy library has a lot of resources. And I'm very interested in the fact that it has a huge digitized book collection, 185,000 books that are probably more directed towards Europe and the colonies of Europe than other collections. They also have a significant newspaper collection, digital newspaper collection. These are their digital records. Memorials, cemeteries, archives, obituaries, magazines, coats of arms, and other types of material in their collections. And so it's a very interesting place to go, particularly if you have any kind of an ancestor that spoke French. Now, up in the top right-hand corner up here, you'll see the total number of individuals as of the date that I did this slide, which is about 3.8 billion individuals. Okay. Now we're going to kind of switch sides here and talk about Filae. Filae has billions of searchable official records online. So there's a little bit of difference here. The difference primarily between Geneanet, as I perceive it, is they're focused on accumulating a large number of family trees. And Geneanet and Filae is, on the other hand, has negotiated to get a huge number of French records. As we continue discussing this, you'll find out that French records are not as easily accessed as other records may be in other parts of the world. So we'll look at that a little bit. So now we're talking about Filae. This is the one that's owned by MyHeritage. Now, as a result of the acquisition of MyHeritage, of Filae, MyHeritage incorporated in its database and on its website 463 million French records. And then about 2 or 3 weeks later, just like a week ago, they added another 22 million records to their collection of French historical records. So they're probably up to close to 500 million, 500 million records of France. And these are, when they're on MyHeritage, they're fully searchable, indexed records that can be that you can use and search using MyHeritage. And if you have a MyHeritage family tree, then those records are also going to be some of those that are searched by their search engines, and you will get record matches to your French ancestors if they happen to show up in any of this 500 million records that they're in there. So Filae also has an individual family tree, and I found this, by the way, to be a rather interesting way to portray a family tree. It's a little bit different, or quite a bit different, from a standard pedigree chart that we would use here in the United States, and it looks to me to be a little more efficient. I think it's a more efficient way of looking at a family tree. It shows the generations going back across the top, so you have a straight line generation, and then when you get into each of the surname ancestors, then it also continues a straight line. So you're not looking kind of back up in a step fashion or trying to manipulate different things. And then it shows a greater depth here by showing all of the ancestors in a line. It's a very efficient way. And I kind of admire this particular method of showing ancestral information. And so as you're looking at this, what we've got is a list of record collections that is very impressive of what's here. All sorts of passenger lists, civil registration records, notarial acts, family trees, military archives, census records, voters' records, decorations, titles, pensions, a lot of kinds of records that I would not, I would, the opinion I would have is that these are more a variety of records than are usually made available in an archival search. So if I were to go to an archive, I may see this long list of records, but this is all searchable records, which is usually more than you find in some archives, particularly in the United States archives. But if you had on the large websites, in addition to that, there are types of records here, like the ones over on the right-hand side, decorations, titles, and pensions. I don't see that those have been, I don't recognize those as being records that would appear on the other large websites, like Family Search, Ancestry, MyHeritage, and Find My Past. So this is a kind of a unique website, and I can basically see and understand from this why MyHeritage would have been interested in purchasing the website. Now we're going to kind of shift out of those websites, because the websites themselves are pretty straightforward. There's not a whole lot to learn. It's not, they're not even close to the complexity of MyHeritage and Family Search. Even Ancestry is easier to use than both of those. But on the other hand, these websites are fairly straightforward. They're searching websites with the database, and they're family tree websites. And you can do the searching into the various areas that they have. And it's basically a reference place to go to search. So now we're going to talk about records, and French history goes way back into prehistoric times, pretty obviously. So what's important to us as genealogists is, when did those records begin to be recorded? So I would, just kind of, this is not to focus us too closely, but a more broad focus here. There are lots of French records on Ancestry, MyHeritage, and Family Search. More on MyHeritage now because they've acquired these huge collections, but Family Search has a sizable number of records, of French records, and Ancestry does too. They all three big websites. So I would suggest, if you're going to start to search for your ancestors, that you have a family tree on each of these websites: Family Search, Family, MyHeritage, or Ancestry. A lot of people question the utility of having more than one family tree. And the question is, well, why would I want to have more than one family tree? It's hard enough to keep up one family tree. How do I keep up two family trees or three family trees? Well, there are some ways to do that. And the simplest way to do that is to add the people in as you're doing research. So if you're actually doing research on a line, is when you add that information into one of these other websites. And as you work with the websites, then you continue to add information into the website so that you can take advantage of any records that they may have, and any record hints that or matches that they may make between your people and their record sets. And these are all just three tools. It's just like saying, why would I shop at three different stores? I mean, I could go to Costco and get everything I want. No. Unfortunately, even if you go to two Costco's in a day, like we have been known to do, you will not find everything you want, and so you will end up going to other stores. And so this is just an analogy that I give, and that each of these websites have its own unique set of records, and each one has its unique advantages in being a place where you would do active genealogical research. And I wanted to make sure that you understood that we could very easily start with any of these websites and start with French genealogy. And then, at least for MyHeritage or Ancestry, you can download your family tree that you've created by using a GEDCOM file, and the GEDCOM file can then be uploaded to create the family trees on either Filae or Geneanet or both. So, it's not you can do that. Now, as you do research, you may need to go into the program and add in the relatives that you're doing research on. This is something that I do. In other words, when I'm doing research, and I'll use Ancestry as an example because there are a lot of people that are familiar with Ancestry. Ancestry, I will build my family tree on Ancestry. Now, it's not up to date. It's not kept up with everything I've ever done in my life. And it has like 10,000 green leaves on it because I haven't gone to do research. But I'm focusing on specific research. And so the specific research that I'm on, I add all those lines into Ancestry and then use the Ancestry's record matches, record hints to help to build my tree. And then I do the same thing with MyHeritage. And if I'm doing any work in some of the other websites, there's always that option to work with other websites in that fashion. I have to admit, I do not have as yet. I have not yet found. I can't say I don't have, but I have not yet found any French-speaking ancestors. So none of my primary research has been in France, but I have certainly helped people with French records. I have had a year or more. I've had more than a year of French formal education in French. Plus, my background is in languages, and I have studied many languages. And so it's just another place to go look for information. Now, how to get started, and I have to put a promo in here for the Family History Guide, because what the Family History Guide is an educational training, and it's the educational training partner of Family Search, but it is basically goes far beyond Family Search as far as the information, because it has instructions for Ancestry, MyHeritage, and Find My Past, and also has other activities, training things, very specific information. This information that you have on the screen is under Countries menu up there at the top of the menu for the Family History Guide. And you simply click on the country you're interested in. And here is a step-by-step instruction with links out to videos and handouts and other information that is very much detailed step-by-step on how to do research with all the resources. And if you look across the top, you'll see that there are goals or individual subject headings for archives and libraries, civil registration, church and cemeteries, immigration, emigration, military records, maps and gazetteers, newspapers, websites, searches, etc. In other words, you can learn about all of these specific different record sets, and then there are links directly to the records. Some of the records that are those little lightning bolts give you direct access. And then you have many more, much more information in other parts of the website here too. The next thing I would highlight would be the Family Search Research Wiki. It's under the Search tab. If you look at the top up there of the page on your screen, it says Family Search, Family Trees, Search, Memories, Indexing, Activities. And if you click on the search menu, it's the last item on the drop-down menu to the Research Wiki. And then you have a vast number of articles that are on various countries and various subjects around the world of genealogical information. And this particular area is a French genealogy. If you look over on the right-hand side of the screen, you'll see links to beginning research, research strategies, record finder, finding town of origin, and you'll see a list of record types. And each one of those record types will click on and will describe the records in detail of what kind of information where they're located, how you access them, and what kinds of information they have on each of those subject headings for each of those types of records. So if you want to know about immigration, you click on immigration, you get that. If you want to know about military records or citizenship, naturalization, newspapers, each one of those categories will give you a significant amount of information about how all of this works. And down at the bottom of the page, you'll see in that list on the right-hand side, you'll see archives and libraries, societies, and family history centers. So there's links there that will take you to French-specific archives and libraries. Now, this works with every other country that's in the Family Search, Family Search Research Wiki, which are almost every country of the world is at least mentioned as far as the records are concerned. And you may be surprised at some of the places and some of the record sets, because this is the go-to place to find out where everything is. And if you want it organized and set forth in an educational from an educational standpoint in teaching you step by step how to do it, then you have the Family History Guide, which is the step-by-step instructions, and actually organizes all this information in the Research Wiki and puts it into a format that you can actually use. Okay, now moving on. Then, of course, we need to jump directly to France, and as you begin to get into French records, as I continue to explain a little bit about the French records, you'll begin to see why eventually you're confronted with having to work right with French archives and French records. Important to understand France. France is a single republic with individual departments. Okay, it's like different departments, but like in the United States, in the executive branch of the United States, you have all these things like the agencies, different agencies, like everything from A to Z on different kinds of agencies. Well, instead of doing having that kind of thing, they don't have states in France. They don't have provinces in France. The government is in charge of everything that happens in France, and what you get are individual departments. They're just part of the single republic. So the hierarchy and the bureaucracy goes straight up to to France, and but the advantage to genealogists is this is really a great advantage, and it would probably, there are some advantages and disadvantages. We'll get into that, but the indexing system used by the Department of Archives is uniform, and it governs every place is the same because it's all one place. It's all France. And so they're going to do that. The National Archives is one place to begin your search. And you'll see I just turned the National Archives into English for those English speaking people who need to get in there. But I'm just going to have to admit, and I'll probably repeat it again at least once or twice during the class, that you really have to know some French to do this. The thing that I did not mention, and I will now, is, and I forgot to mention this, is that the Research Wiki has French genealogy word lists. So you can begin to learn all the terms that are available, but understanding the records, that takes some time, and there are a lot of places that train and help you understand. You do not need to learn how to speak French fluently like you wanted to go there and speak to the natives. No, what you want to do is learn enough French so that you can read the records and understand what they're saying. And that's a fairly compact area of the language. And so learning all of the words you need to know, like birth, death, baptism, death, burial, registration, marriage ban, anything that goes along with all of those different kinds of records are also the words that you need to use. So it's a process and it's a challenge, but it's a nice challenge. And if you took a couple of courses in French or did one online, it would be helpful because it would give you a little bit of a legs up into the resources. Now, this is where it gets a little bit interesting. Local, individual parish and civil registration records. Okay, we're used to seeing large catalogs of parish and civil registration records. Well, and that's why I would start you with the large online websites, because they're the websites that have that large overlook on all the different websites. But if you're going to get into looking at more records and perhaps into sets of records that are not available on the big websites, as you may find out fairly quickly, or may not find your people at all because they live in some place that just doesn't happen to be on the big website, then you understand that these records have been digitized and it's available, but they're available individually in every one of those departments, those little colored areas on the map. And so each one has their own individual departmental archive. And there is this map on the Research Wiki under the French Archives and Libraries article, where you can click on that on the department, and it will take you directly to the archive website. So this is this one way to start getting into it. The key, of course, if you back up just a step before you go jumping into clicking on a map, on an interactive map, is that you absolutely, without doubt and without any possible excuse, have to know the location of the events in your ancestors' lives. There are just too many names, and too many names come out the same. And unless you are extremely well focused on exactly where these people came from, then you will probably get some whatever. You will not be able to find what you're looking for, just bluntly, because the place is the key. And here in France, it's more than the key. It's the only way you can get into looking at the records at the department level. And how many of these records have been shared that are digitized? That I don't think that anybody knows that, because but I would suggest that the larger websites are now probably going to be competing somewhat for French records. Now, interestingly enough, here's the realities of the records that are occurring out there. The governments of these countries and the districts and the departments and everywhere, not just here in France, but around the world, have sort of been alerted to the fact and become aware of the fact that genealogical records have some value to some people. In other words, us, people who are interested in doing our genealogy. And so they have, over the years, as I've been doing research, the records have become more and more monetized, meaning you've got to pay to get the records. The classic is in England, where all of the civil registration records, the original records, are kept by the General Record Office, and you have to pay for individual records. And it runs about, we looked it up a couple of weeks ago, it was about £8 a record. But there's a discount if you get them digitally instead of having them send it to you. But it's not going to be inexpensive. And in the other part of this is that these records are individually in these different departments. And so you will have to go to that department's records to see the records that you want for that particular area, assuming that you've been able to locate the area. Okay, so I don't want to discourage anybody, but this is the this is what's the reality of French research and many other places. The French civil registration is kind of the key here, because they began civil registration of birth, marriages, and death information beginning in 1792. Some of the records go back into the 1500s. Don't count on it, but they actually had registers that go back very, very far. And yes, this is what the records look like. And yes, you have to be able to read the records. And there may or may not be an index to the records. They may be searchable. They may not be searchable. When people say that their records have been digitized, that does not mean that they've been indexed. It means that they've been digitized. And that means you could actually see them online, but that doesn't mean you're going to have any assistance in finding the records that you are in need of, which will require a page-by-page examination of records over a period of time, assuming you do not have a specific birth, marriage, or death date. And even then, you would then begin to look forward and backward on the records for additional family members. So this is how these records look and how they are kept, and they are kept on the district level. The church records are also on the district level. Those were the parish, church, and civil registration records. So the church parish registers date back as early as 1334. You're going to find most of these records that start disappearing in the mid 1500s. 1550 is sort of the cutoff date. But it's possible that you'll find records back further for the people that you're researching. But most of the surviving records are from the date from the mid 1600s. So you're not going to get too much further back than about 1600 when you're working on these records. So 1792 is the magic number for the church records, for the civil registration records. Before 1792, the church records are crucial because they're the only ones that are going to be continuously kept. But the church records are not all digitized and filmed, and because they're incomplete and less accurate than the civil registers. Okay, so church records are pretty spotty, but so practically speaking, you may run out of records sometime around 1700, 1792, just close to 1800. So there's just a reality of the actual records. And I'm sure everyone here will recognize Notre Dame here in Paris. This is a pre-fire picture of the church, because it was there was a huge fire and it's still being reconstructed. And as we were there, saw some of the evidences of the fire and the reconstruction. It's pretty sad, actually, that the church had to go through that terrible fire. Now, what do you think? Well, let's go look at the census records. Of course, if we're in the United States and England and any other country like that, you can go look for census records. Well, the answer is census records from 1830 to 1906, when they were kept, are less than 100 years old, are confidential, and may not be searched by individuals. And as a matter of fact, they're a little bit less than useful because they're not really organized very well. They're just a list of names, and they don't really show relationships, and they really don't. And you'd have to really dig into them to get the locations, because they're all coded by the location. So you have to learn the location system, and then you would have to dig into it, and then you may find only one name or two names. So it's they're not the most promising area of French records. In addition, they have not been microfilmed. and they're seldom used for genealogical research. So there are some places where you can search them. And unlike the census of the United States and Canada and Great Britain, they can't be used to locate families. They're also not indexed, by the way, which gives you another index in an interesting situation of having to search through maybe thousands of pages of unindexed records. So you can begin to get there here, and it doesn't seem like with the civil registration that there's much of an incentive on the part of the French government to do much more with the census records. Oh, by the way, this is the records that are available here on the French National Archives types of things. You'll see down at the bottom an interesting one. They actually have family search as one of the places where you can go to look for records at the French National Archives. So I would suggest that you may kind of get a message from that there is a place to look here in the United States. Now, you may want to use these large genealogy websites, and what I would suggest is you look at the catalogs. This is the card catalog from Ancestry. We have the catalog on Family Search, and we have the record collections list on MyHeritage, and we have all the records viewed on Find My Past, and some of the other websites give you lists of all the records that are available. And so here, by looking at the card catalog and studying it a little bit, you'll begin to get a feel for when the records are available. You'll see here that they do have some census and voter lists that are searchable, and they've been made searchable on Ancestry, not from France. And so these are searchable records in some cases. You can also see the dates that the records are available and the places where they're available. And so that's a good way to get started. French military records date back to the 1500s. And so you're going to have a lot of French military records to look for. That is a very useful thing because most of the European countries had almost universal conscription of all of the males. You had to register whether you ever got drafted or not, or pressed into army service. So you were basically waiting for any time they could do. A lot of the countries during different time periods, and you'd have to look and study that out, have mandatory military service by all people 18 years of age or 20 years of age or whatever age they cut it off at. And it varies from time to time. So it was historically. So you're going to have to get into some history. But this is the website in France that has all of the military records. So this is another very good resource. Now, perhaps this is a new area of records that you may not have ever considered, and you may have looked on lists of records in the Family Search catalog or even on the other websites, and seen notarial records as being listed. Now, here in the United States, notaries are not repositories of records. In other words, you go into a notary in the United States and you have a document notarized. That means that they authenticate your signature for legal purposes. And that's sort of what notaries do here in the United States. And if you're thinking about that in terms of a country like France or any of the other European countries, then you're basically going to have to kind of adjust that way of thinking, because notarial records, notaries in those countries were in the sense quasi-governmental agencies that handled various transactions, from real estate to marriage licenses, any kind of thing. Anything that required some kind of government interest was usually involved some kind of notary. You had to have the document had to be notarized, and the notaries were the repository of the documents. So they're the ones that have all the documents. And sometimes you can find notary documents back as early as the 1300s. There's two things you have to know. In order to use the records, you have to know or guess who the notary was, because they're all set up by their records, and then they're not necessarily organized in any particular fashion, because each notary could do their own organization. And so there's a massive amount of these records out there in the local record repositories and places where they may be kept, that are of extreme value to genealogists, but are not necessarily readily available. Once again, you're down on the street looking for a notaries and asking them personally if they have the records or if something's available. So, kind of to summarize here, you may have to learn to read and speak French and travel to France. Oh, hardship. Just hardship to go to France, I know. But by the way, Americans don't get a very warm welcome in France. Because we have money, we're dealt with. But other than that, sometimes trying your high school French on the people in France will get you coming back. Like one waitress we had in Paris. She came up speaking French, and we immediately said, "Oh, sorry, but we don't speak French." And she switched into English, and then some people walked up and they started speaking to her in Spanish, and she switched into Spanish. And then a few minutes later, someone else walked up and she switched into another language. So it's not impossible. It's just culturally difficult more difficult in France sometimes to not speak French than it is in other places in Europe. The Netherlands, for example, when we spent some weeks in the Netherlands, we only found one person, and the whole time we were there talking to people in shops and street and randomly that didn't speak English. Only one person that didn't speak English. So, it's kind of different from country to country. And I would encourage everyone to learn about the history, learn about the record sets, and then keep learning about the records. Because the more you learn about the records, the more surprises there are going to be. Now, you saw earlier on, I had the wiki up there, and I had a long list of different types of records that were available. And if going through each of those types of records, it's kind of a basic way of understanding the playing field, where you're out there, where you're going to start searching for records for your family. And you may find that land and property records and probate records and other kinds of records are valuable and useful in a lot of situations in moving forward with families. Right now, at the end of a line, I have a probate record. Would be just wonderful if we could find his will. We would then know and be able to identify the family, but that has eluded me for the last 40 years so far. Okay, let's see, what else have we got? Oh, just remember all these websites: Geneanet, Filae, Ancestry, Find My Past, Family Search, and My Heritage. All of these great websites, they're out there. There are other places to look. There's other resources. This is by far not an exhaustive list of resources. There are just places that every one of those categories of records is going to be located someplace. And those places are the places that you will eventually end up looking. Have you spend the time and the effort to do so? Well, thank you so much.